So this jig streamer has caught most of my fish over the last few months. It's pretty much a stripped down version of a Sculpzilla tied in jig hook proportions. So let's get into the tying tutorial. So in the vise I've got a Fulling Mill 5130 jig hook. It's a 2XL hook. And I've got a 4mm black slotted tungsten bead. I'm going to start by putting on an olive Squirrel Zonker and leaving myself about a 1-inch tail. 1 inch being the skin part. So we want it oriented on the hook so it'll ride her side up when it's inverted. So you can see the orientation. We then want to move it out of the way, and I'm going to tie in, or wrap in, 8 wraps of 0.15 lead-free wire. This is just to give it a little bit more mass, and then it'll help keep the bead in place as we tie other material. So I'm building up a little bit of a thread dam behind the wire with 140 Denier UTC thread and olive. I'm just covering up the wire wraps so they don't move around on me. And then I'm going to move my thread back towards the end of the shank of the hook. Next, just get your Squirrel Zonker into place and part the hair so you don't tie down too much hair when you wrap your tail into place. So you kind of want to split the hairs so they go to either side and don't get captured. Also, if you take little tugs on the thread to the side on each wrap, it'll help lock it in so it won't spin on you. Checking the length here. And then you want to move your thread a couple eye lengths forward. We're going to be tying in a strand of root beer colored Krystal flash. I'm doubling it over, and I'm going to tie it to each side of the hook. So that's why we want a little bit of room so we can tie it back towards the tail and it'll move towards the tail end. Repeat the process on the other side. Next, we're going to be tying in a length of olive diamond braid. This is what we'll use to build up the body. Add some flash and some color contrast. A little bit lighter, so it'll look like the lighter belly of a Sculpin. So when you're wrapping this in, you want to make tight wraps with a fair amount of tension on the braid at the back because we've already built up bulk. And then as we move forward, we can back off the tension and let it expand a little bit. And it'll help keep the body a little more uniform. Wrapping this forward. Once we get up to the bead, capture it with our thread and snip it off close. Next, flip your hook over and then start preening back the squirrel fur. You want to make sure you capture as much as you can when you tie it in near the bead. And you want it to sit on top of the hook. So what I'm doing here is I'm making a wrap and then pulling up and down to make sure it doesn't spin on me but is locked in. And then snipping it off close. Then I'm just going to go through it a few more times with thread just to make sure it's fully locked in. I really don't want it spinning on me, so I want to make sure it's... Next, I've taken a red saddle hackle feather and snipped off a little notch so I could tie it in. Then we're going to make 2 wraps around to build up the gills on the Sculpzilla. Make sure to capture it and then snip it off. You could go 2, you could go 3 wraps. I go 2 here. I won't do any more or less than. Then you can kind of capture all the fibers and bring them back a little bit. And take a wrap of thread to kind of make sure they splay back. Next, I'm taking an olive strung marabou feather, putting the tips in a clip, and then snipping off the butt ends. We're going to put this in a split thread dubbing loop. So I'm uncording the thread so it'll lay flat right now, and then taking a bodkin and running it down the length of the thread to make sure it's flat, and spinning out any direction I need to make sure I can create that split thread loop. Split the thread, and then stick the clip all the way through the loop, and then let the 2 strands run down the length of the clip and capture the marabou. You then want to spread it out evenly so it's not clumped up. If it's clumped up, you won't be able to quarter it back up and spin it back, lock it in. So you need to make sure it's evenly spaced along, kind of like that. Then I'm just gonna cord the thread back up and capture all that marabou. It might take quite a few spins. Once it's all corded up, it'll kind of look like this. And then you can go ahead and pull your hackle fibers back and create this marabou collar right up near the bead. You want to kind of capture it as you wrap and pull it back. So now we've got something that kind of looks like a Sculpin, but you need to go in and pick it out to a length you like. Clean it up a little bit. So I'm in a spot to where I like where my marabou's sitting, and I'm going to create a short little dubbing noodle of SLF Prism and olive, just to create one little collar around our thread. The last step, go in and do a 6-turn whip finish. Seat the knot. Make sure it's seated really well. Then I'm just gonna go in here and clean a few stray fibers up. The last step is to go in and cut our crystal flash to length, just about towards the end of the tail. And then you have your jig Sculpzilla. Like I said, this fly's been my most consistent producer over the last month. For the end of this video, let's go into a few fishing clips of fish I've caught on it. It's a pretty good fish too. Pretty decent fish. The spot I fished through earlier. Let's get him unhooked. Skinny. Jig streamer. Beautiful fish.